The UFC is home to some of the most talented mixed martial artists in the world. That said, only a handful of men and women on the roster will ever earn a title shot. Of course, once an athlete finally gets a chance to compete for the gold, winning the title can often be a daunting task to say the least. In truth, over the years we have seen more than a few title challenges get absolutely dismantled by the reigning champ. So for this video, we'll be taking a look at a list of champions who completely and utterly dominated their challenger. As always, if you guys enjoy this video, then please be sure to let me know by leaving a like and subscribing to our channel. Now without further ado, and ranked in no particular order, let's take a look at 10 title challengers who were completely dominated by the champion. Number 10. Brian Ortega vs Max Holloway. Brian T-City Ortega is a 29-year-old featherweight who has used his slick submission skills to snatch victories from the jaws of defeat on more than a few occasions. After securing several submission victories against top-ranked featherweights, T-City managed to KO the former champion Frankie Edgar on his way to earning a title shot. With an undefeated record of 14-0, Ortega was set to meet reigning champ Max Holloway at UFC 231, and even entered the fight as a slight favourite. Unfortunately for Ortega, Holloway would end up putting on a striking clinic and thoroughly dominated the rising prospect, with Holloway spending the better part of 4 rounds beating his opponent to a bloody pulp. In fact, Holloway even ended up setting a record for the most significant strikes landed in a single fight, connecting a whopping 290 shots. Following 20 minutes of punishment, the cage-side doctor called a halt to the action, in what would turn out to be arguably the finest performance of Max Holloway's career. Number 9. CAIN VELASQUEZ vs Antonio Silva 2. After CAIN VELASQUEZ won their first fight with relative ease via a first-round TKO, fans weren't exactly clamouring to see Antonio Bigfoot Silva get a second crack at VELASQUEZ. That said, after consecutive knockout victories over Travis Brown and Alistair Overeem, in a relatively shallow heavyweight division, Bigfoot had earned a second date with VELASQUEZ, and this time it was for the heavyweight belt. The rematch would go down in 2013 at UFC 160. This time around, the champ scored an early knockdown and never looked back. VELASQUEZ proceeded to hammer his opponent with vicious ground and pound in a fight that went almost exactly the same as their first encounter. In total, VELASQUEZ ended up landing 18 heavy shots, while Silva only managed to respond with 2 of his own. Following a beating that lasted 1 minute and 21 seconds, the referee decided to call a stop to the action and awarded VELASQUEZ a TKO victory. Number 8. Demetrious Johnson vs Ray Borg. In 2017, Ray the Taz Mexican Devil Borg had established himself as one of the top flyweights in the world. Borg's 5-2 record inside the octagon, combined with the fact that champion Demetrious Johnson had more or less cleaned out the division, set the stage for Ray Borg's title shot at UFC 216. Prior to the contest, most pundits expected Johnson to win the contest handedly. After all, Johnson had bested top competitors like John Dodson, Joseph Benavidez and Henry Cejudo with relative ease. And as it turned out, most pundits were right. Unfortunately for Ray Borg, it was clear right from the outset that the champ was a superior fighter. During the bout, Johnson ended up landing 172 total strikes compared to just the 22 for the challenger. The champ not only outstruck him, but also outgrappled him in virtually every exchange. Johnson eventually capped off his dominant performance by submitting Borg with a spectacular flying armbar late into the 5th round. The submission win marked Johnson's 11th consecutive title defense, which beat the previous record set by Anderson Silva in 2012. Number 7. BJ Penn vs Diego Sanchez. With 7 consecutive losses prior to his exit, BJ Penn's UFC career didn't exactly end on a high note. That said, in his prime, the former 2-division champ was one of the best mixed martial artists in the world. Anyone who wants to see Penn at his peak should be immediately referred to his lightweight title defense against Diego Sanchez at UFC 107. That evening, the Hawaiian painted an MMA masterpiece, and Diego the Nightmare Sanchez was his canvas. A long-time fan favourite and inaugural Ultimate Fighter winner, Sanchez put together an impressive 4-fight win streak that included victories over Clay Guida and Joe Stevenson. However, the fight itself turned out to be a nightmare for Sanchez. BJ Penn would end up teeing off his opponent 149 times, with Sanchez only landing 8 total strikes in response. Following one of the most one-sided title fights that the lightweight division has ever seen, the Prodigy scored a 5th round TKO to win the contest. Number 6. George St-Pierre vs Dan Hardy. These days, Nottingham's Dan the Outlaw Hardy is known for his commentary work. However, he was also a very accomplished fighter in his heyday, and even earned a shot at the UFC Welterweight Championship back in 2010. At UFC 111, the Outlaw went toe-to-toe with the legendary GSP for the welterweight strap. Prior to facing St-Pierre, Hardy had won 7 consecutive bouts, thus making him the clear-cut #1 contender. Of course, Hardy would soon discover why many consider St-Pierre to be the greatest fighter to ever don a pair of 4-ounce gloves. The champ used his explosive takedowns to control his opponent throughout the majority of the contest. In fact, the French-Canadian secured all 11 of his takedown attempts and never gave the Englishman a chance to get into the fight. In the end, GSP was awarded a clear unanimous decision victory, in a bout that left no doubt in fans' mind who the better fighter was. Number 5. Georges St-Pierre vs BJ Penn 2. At UFC 58, MMA legends Georges St-Pierre and BJ Penn met for the first time in a highly competitive match. That night, it was St-Pierre who got his hand raised via a hard-fought split decision victory. However, the fighters would meet again roughly 2 years later at UFC 94. This time, the Canadian superstar would be defending his welterweight title against Penn, who at that time was the reigning lightweight king. While there was plenty of anticipation for the clash of champions, the fight itself wasn't what fans expected given their previous history. Since their first encounter, St-Pierre had clearly taken his game to the next level, and easily picked Penn apart for the majority of the fight. The welterweight champ connected with nearly 5 strikes for every blow that his opponent landed, whilst also keeping the prodigy grounded for a significant portion of the contest. Following 20 minutes of total domination, Penn's corner waved off the fight to award GSP the win. Number 4. Francis Ngannou vs Stipe Miocic. Former heavyweight title challenger Francis the Predator Ngannou is one of the scariest fighters in the division. With punching power that's comparable to being struck by an automobile, the Predator had put away Andrei Arlovski and Alistair Overeem en route to earning a shot at Stipe Miocic. While Ngannou may have entered the contest as a slight favourite, Miocic quickly reminded fans why he is the king of the heavyweight division. The Predator admittedly lived up to the bill in the first round as he landed some solid shots. However, he quickly began to fade, and the champ soon took advantage of his opponent's rapidly depleting gas tank. The firefighter from Cleveland, Ohio, used a balanced attack of both takedowns and strikes to dismantle his opponent and earn a decisive unanimous decision victory. The win also earned Stipe his 3rd consecutive title defense, setting the record for the most title defenses in heavyweight history. Number 3. Jon Jones vs Chael Sonnen. Chael Sonnen is one of the sport's best trash talkers, who is perhaps best remembered for nearly dethroning Anderson Silva at UFC 117. Of course, the Oregon native also challenged Jon Jones for the light heavyweight strap in a bout that was far less memorable. Despite coming off of a second loss to Silva, Sonnen remained one of the promotion's most popular stars, and secured yet another title fight. After coaching opposite one another on the 17th season of The Ultimate Fighter, the bad guy was set to face Jon Jones for the light heavyweight title at UFC 159. As was often the case with Sonnen's fights, the build-up heading into the contest was top-notch. Sadly, the match itself was almost all one-way traffic. Jones ran through his rival, securing several takedowns before ultimately ending the fight via a vicious ground and pound in the very first round. Number 2. Ben Henderson vs Nate Diaz. Ben Smooth Henderson probably doesn't get enough credit for being one of the best UFC lightweights of his era. In fact, the former world champ is tied with BJ Penn for the most title fight wins in lightweight history with 4. In his second title defense, Henderson squared off with Stockton's own Nate Diaz, who was coming off of impressive victories over Donald Cerrone and Jim Miller. Of course, Henderson put all that momentum to a screeching halt, and showcased the skills that made him a world champ. At UFC on Fox 5, Henderson demonstrated his incredible fight IQ by mixing up strikes and takedowns in a manner that kept Diaz off his game. The champ's ability to keep Diaz on his back for a good portion of the contest made it easy for judges to score, and when it was all said and done, they awarded Henderson a unanimous decision victory. Number 1. Amanda Nunes vs Felicia Spencer. At this point, anyone who isn't aware that Amanda Nunes is the greatest female fighter of all time simply hasn't been paying attention. The reigning 2-division champ has beaten several future Hall of Famers with relative ease, and established herself as one of the top pound-for-pound fighters in the UFC. Oftentimes, the Lioness finishes off her prey in the early rounds. However, one woman who recently bucked that trend was Montreal's own Felicia Spencer. While Spencer managed to go the distance with the champ, there was really no doubt over who would ultimately get their hand raised. In their UFC 250 showdown, some pundits believe Spencer might have the advantage in the grappling department, but the final numbers showed otherwise. The Brazilian secured 6 of her 7 takedown attempts, while her opponent went 0 for 6 in that department. Nunes would go on to dominate all aspects of the contest, as she earned a lopsided decision victory. As always, if you guys enjoyed this video, then please be sure to let me know by leaving a like and subscribing to our channel. Apart from that, thanks so much for watching guys, and we'll see you on the next video.